bonus block today because I was cleaning up and I ran across some other fabrics and I was like, you know what? Let me take a break from cleaning up and let me make a block. So then I decided, let me pick a hard block to do. And it's not too hard, but it's going to be challenging. So it's challenging in the way that they're telling me how to make it. And so, just so that we're being honest, I do have extra pieces of fabric just in case. And I can do something else with those if I don't need them, but I'm just not sure. So we'll see. So, in order to get started with this project, the pattern is from makermary.com and it's the directions for how to sew a 12.5 inch woven star quilt block. And you need four fabrics and you need your background. So the four fabrics I'm using are these four batiks. I'm using my same background that I have for all of the other quilt blocks just because I want to keep that consistent. The measurements are 3.5 inches square for these, and I need four of these. These are in the corners of the block. And then these are all 4 inches square. And I needed four of each of these and only three of the background. And they tell you to cut them in half on the diagonal. So we've done that much. I did all of that offline. Sometimes I find it easier, especially with the quilting, to do it offline because then I can concentrate and make sure my cuts are right. And that still doesn't mean that I haven't messed something up. But I believe that I have everything together. So they do tell you to arrange everything according to the layout. So we're going to attempt to do this, but we do know that, or I, when I looked over the pattern again and again and again, I realized that, yeah, it didn't look quite the way that they claim it's supposed to look. So it may be a little off, and that's just because there are some squares, there are some blocks or units that we're going to make that are not going to be as big as some of the other ones. And that's fine. So I am going to have two smaller units in here. And I just need to remember that when I'm laying this out. So I'm trying to go according to her pattern for how she has it laid out. Let me move some things out the way. Just so that we can get an idea of what this is going to look like. And I think these are considered my dark ones. So let me use what I consider my light ones. So they tell you to use two light fabrics and they tell you to use two dark fabrics. So I need to remind myself of which are the lights and which are the darks. I do need to remind myself of that. Now, this won't line up wonderfully and completely just because there are some seams in here, but we're just going to get the general idea of what this is going to look like. So I'm just playing with the blocks and placing them in the order in which they should go. Need to make sure that while I'm doing this, that my background fabrics are faced the right way. This one is where that little triple is going to go. And that's going to take a little bit of work to do. But I just want to get the layout together for what this is going to look like. And then we'll go from there. So usually I can read the directions and I can figure it out. And then sometimes, yeah, not so much. So just taking my time. And it already looks like I'm one block off. And I don't know how that happened, but I'll go back and check that again. But that's okay if I need to make yet one more block. Just goes there. So I'm just trying to figure out the layout. And again, the great thing about this is that if you lay it out ahead of time, you'll see it and you'll see like where the errors are. Because I'm good for making a mistake. In here is where I'm going to have a block that looks like this, and then there's going to be one that's split. So those are all going to be splits. That one goes there. That's a dark. And then this is, I can see like right where I made the error because this will be blue here. So this is yellow. So that's yellow there. And then I have another corner. And then here is where I need one more, um, what do you call that? One more 4-inch square. So I'm short one 4-inch square. And I want to say the directions said 3. No. So I needed 3 of these colors. So I have too many of them. And I needed 4. So I read that backwards. So that was my mistake. So now I need one more 4-inch square. So I do keep all of my blocks, all of my scraps together. And we're going to see if I can eke out a 4-inch square. And then cut that in half. And I will always like take you on my journey. I can cut that out. Okay. So we're going to move some things in order for that to happen. But you can see how like the star is getting ready to form. So this is what it's going to look like. But like I said, what's going to happen in here, and I can fold it just so you can see it, is there will be an A, and then let's say in this case it's a C. And they'll go together like that. And then they will go right in there like that. So that like half of this will be here, half of that will be there. Then there'll be another piece where it will be an A and a D. And I'm kind of shocked that my fabric is actually staying folded, because sometimes when I do these little demonstrations to show something, my fabric likes to make a fool out of me. And let me see, we'll do that one like that. So you see that like that. So you see how it looks like it's woven. Then there is B, just so you get the full idea. So B will be in there. And then this is C. Now, this is the look I'm going for. And this is the hope that once I put all this together, this is what it's supposed to look like. And if you know me, you know, just because it's supposed to work out that way, doesn't mean it's going to work that way the first time, or the second, or the third. And there are a couple different patterns out for this one, but this is the one I'm going with. And again, this is Maker. This is makermary.com. And so you can see it from there, like what that looks like. If it's off somewhere, then traditionally what I, will do is I'll capture it. But if I take a picture of it, take my camera and I take a picture of it, I can see it from here to see where there are errors. And you see how I thought I did it right, but right there is the wrong color. Which is one of the reasons why I like to lay it out. So I can see it and then take a picture of it just to see if I did it right. So we'll erase that one because we don't need it. And we'll take another one. Okay. And then we'll look at it. And that looks right. So this is the look that I'm looking to achieve, even though I still need my 2 blocks over here. So I do need another 4-inch cut in on a diagonal. So that's what I'm going for. All these are going to be extras. We'll save those for another project. And now it's time to put everything together. And there's a special way that we're going to put together these units so that we create that tricolor block that we're going to need. So we can take this out and this out. And what we're going to do is stitch these together like that. Now let me find my sewing machine foot. Oops, I knew I was going to kick that. Now, it's important that when I sew these, that I sew these correctly, because if I don't, then I'm going to end up with the wrong cut. So these are going to fit right in that corner like that. So I need the yellow on top and the blue right here. And that's why we have extra ones cut out, just in case Jennifer sews this together wrong. Because to know Jennifer is to know it can be sewn together wrong. Let's open this up. One thing I like about batiks is that you can finger press batiks and they will fold very nicely. And that's going to fit right there in that corner. And that is half and half. So then they have us take this one. We're going to fold it in half. Find that center. And then we're going to line that center up with this. And then we'll take this to the machine and we're going to stitch. And this is very interesting because this is never how I've ever done this way. So this is new for me to do it this way. But when I saw it, I said, okay, that makes sense. When I just line everything up. And you're going to get something that looks like this. Now, the piece that you did with this is smaller than these two sides, but we're going to end up squaring it up. And the way that they have you do this is to use your ruler. And you're essentially lining it up with a 3.5. Because we're going to make a 3.5-inch block. But what I want to do is do the 4 first, and then I'll go back for the 3. Because if it's a little off, I want to catch it before I make this the actual size it's supposed to be. So we're cutting off the excess of that blue and yellow, and then there's your block or your unit. And that unit will fit right in there. We can open this up. I'm going to finger press this open, but I am going to take it to the iron. Of course, it's been sitting for a while, so it might not be as hot as I want it to be. So again, I have all of the directions that I need for what I need it to do. And again, they're telling me and giving me the directions that I need. Okay, good press. Nice and flat. And for right now, we're going to leave it like this. We'll trim everything later. But right now, I'm going to leave it like that. So this is one of those. And just for giggles, we'll put these two together. Just to show you how this works. Now, when you put these together, these have been cut on the diagonal, so they've been cut on the bias. That means that there is a possibility that when you're sewing it together, if you are pulling on your fabric, it will stretch it out and cause it to warp on you. which means it could make your sizes a little wonky. So you want to try as best as you can not to tug on your fabric when you're sewing. And that's hard because some of us will hold one end with a hand to keep it straight. Let your fingers do it. And just lightly do it. So I'm just lightly with my fingers, making sure that that's staying straight, that I'm not pulling my fabric. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and do all of these just to get these out the way. Because everything on the inside is going to have that other look, and we can go ahead and finish that other look once we do these. Now I did two. I do like, and that's just the anal part of me. I do like to keep everything in order when I'm working with a new project, just because I will mix it up and then I will drive myself crazy trying to put it back together again. So I did the two half square triangles on one side. I started it on the second. And again, like I said, we have to trim these up. But right now, we're just going to leave them as is. And then we'll trim them all up at the same time. So I'm sewing them and I'm pressing them, but I am not trimming them. And I'll do, like I said, all at once. It's up to you if you want to trim as you go. They're all going to be the same size. So it's not like you're going to mix them up and then not have the right size. So they're all going to be the same size as these corners. But I just want to see the vision as I'm going. Just want to slide that down just a little bit. Okay. So this whole row, with the exception of sizing, is done. This one is done. We're going to work on this one. And we have one of these of the four done. So we just need to do four more. And I said, this is not a hard block to make. It's just that if you follow the directions, like it makes sense. Lay it out. Okay. Then typically for most quilt blocks, I don't lay them out. But if the directions the first time say lay it out, who am I to argue with the person who wrote the pattern? So I will go ahead and lay it out because that's what you told me to do. And then I can go back and do it my way the second or third time that I make the block. So I just added two, one more from the top. Remember, I can't do the one side because I still need another 4-inch square. And again, this is a free pattern. So because it is a free pattern, I absolutely can tell you the sizes of each of the units and talk about measurements along the way. But again, this is Maker Merry, like merrychristmas.com. So I'm using their pattern and I'm following their directions. So there are also a ton of blocks, quilt blocks, that you can make online. You absolutely do not have to use a pattern that you have to pay for. Now, the person who takes the time to write the pattern that you're paying for may give you some tips and tricks that the person who is not charging you for that pattern may not give you. Their pattern may be very vague. They may just tell you the steps and not give you pictures. The person who is creating the pattern that you're paying for is possibly pattern testing it so that somebody else is reading their directions to see if it makes sense. Is it easy to follow? Or is there anything they need to add to it? They may add pictures with it. They may create a video that you could use to follow. So they're going to convenience you maybe a lot more than a person who is giving it to you for free. And that's not to say that free patterns don't have really great instructions, because some do. It's just that you're not guaranteed that like you would a paid pattern. So a paid pattern, I expect you to come correct with your stuff. I expect maybe you have a page telling me that you had errors when you wrote the pattern and here's the fix. So I'm just expecting a little more customer service when I know that you're charging me for something. Then I might expect if you're giving it to me for free. So freebies come with a cost sometimes. And so sometimes it's just easier to buy the pattern. And sometimes you just get somebody who's thorough and has no problem giving you thorough. Okay. So I have the fourth block cut. Again, these are 4-inch blocks. And the colored ones, I said there were 4 of them. You only needed 3, not 4. I had my directions backwards. So you needed 3 4-inch blocks. I actually cut 4. Okay, and then you just cut that in half. So then that goes there, and this one goes here. Okay, so we can finish these off, and then we can finish those other 3 units, and then all of the units will be sewn together, and then it's just a matter of trimming them up, or trimming them down, I should say, because you can't trim something up. So you're going to trim them down to 3.5 inches. And you can see that my hands, while I'm touching the fabric, I'm not pulling on the fabric because I don't want it to bow or to wave on me while it's going through the machine under the needle, because that's what will cause some waving, and I do want these blocks to be as flat as possible. And again, I can open these up to start with my fingers. You can press to the dark side. You'll see in a lot of my videos, I do not have a way. I'm not loyal. I pick the way that works best for the project. And if the way that works best for the project is to open it, we open it. If the way that works best for the project is to press to one side, I press on the one side. If it just makes sense for me to do it a certain way, I just do it that way. So I think I have two more of the half square triangles to go. So you could have used the method where you make two half square triangles at a time. You can take the pattern itself and use any website that gives you the measurements for making it that way. And then you absolutely could make these two at a time rather than doing them the way that I am. And then that also avoids, the possibility of the bowing because everything will be intact while you're sewing. You won't have that bias edge exposed. So you could absolutely do that. And as you get better with making your quilt blocks and interpreting your patterns, you'll see those spaces where it's like, oh, they had me cut this in half and do it this way. You know what? I think I'd rather, you know, make the block bigger so the two draw the line so it on both sides and then cut it that way. And there's nothing wrong with you changing that pattern so that it does exactly what you need it to do. There are, I think, one of the blocks, because I just couldn't bring myself to doing it, the person said to cut out like 16 squares in each color. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Was it 10? Whatever the number was, I was like, I'm not doing that. And I created strips instead of individual squares because it was easier for me to strip piece than it was for me to sit back and to cut each one out. So I just went ahead and did that one, but you don't have to. So you'll see this is still coming together and we've already finished this one. So we just have these to go. And again, remember, I want to make sure that that point goes right in here and these are going in the right direction. So I'm taking my time. Because if you sew on the wrong side, you're going to seam it. So it's easier to take your time and go through it. And I could do another one. So I want to see it the way that it should look. And then fold those on top of each other because if you do the wrong end, you're going to get the wrong look. And the good thing with this is because we're using so many different colors, you'll catch it faster. But let you only have used two colors, oh, there's a possibility you might not have caught it if you put them on the wrong way. So I'm twisting it just to make sure. I finger pressed it open and then I'll just press it with the iron. It gets that nice and flat. We take our whole one. We're going to fold it in half. Find that center. I'm using my fingers to press it just to give myself a nice crease. And I don't know why I don't have because we're going to need some clips. And then I'll lay this right here, right on that seam line and clip. Okay, so it'll look like this. This one is now shorter than these two units together. And I'm going to stitch them. And again, we're working on some of the bias. So we just want to make sure that we're not pulling anything because we don't want it to warp or bow. Okay, we'll leave that one on there for right now. This is number 3 that we need to do a 4. Finger press. Take it to the iron and give it a good heat press. We know these are the next 2 that we're going to do. Finger press this one. Right in that center. We're going to line that up with the seam. And clip. This one here, we're making sure that it's on the right sides. We'll put these 2 together. And it's like important to do these right away because sometimes you'll forget, you'll flip it, and then you're mad at yourself because you're like, I checked it. But again, like if you're answering the phone or you're paying attention to something online, you could miss it. So we want to make sure that we have them on the right sides. But like they say, this is what we create seam rippers for. And I cleaned off my table. I found 2 of them. So I kept saying to myself, where are my seam rippers? Okay, we're going to slide these just a little bit because I keep hitting them with my square, and it would have been too much like right to get the one that I just put up after I cleaned up. And we're just taking the edge of this and lining it up with the yellow triangle. And we're trimming off the excess blue and green. Now this is not a perfect 3.5 yet. So we still have to do some trimming. Now you could, if you had a ruler, which I have upstairs, if you have a trimmer, you could absolutely trim these so that they would have been the size that you needed. You could use your ruler and do those right away. I just wanted to make sure everything fit before I did that. Something doesn't look right. Okay. Now it looks right. It didn't look right, and I don't have my picture open in front of me. So it's just a matter of twisting it to make sure that it lines up the way it's supposed to. Here's the last one that I'm finger pressing. Pressing with the hot iron. That's nice and flat. And I could eyeball this because it lines up with this here and then move it down. But I'm not, my hand's not that steady. So me just lining up those points and just giving it a good finger press. And I can list through that. I have a better shot with it lining up the way that it's supposed to. So we have this, and again, you could see the blue, the overhang is the green and the orange. We use our ruler. And again, you pay for what you get what you pay for. And so while these rulers will work on the Tactile Shop, I prefer a ruler that has everything I need. Okay, then we'll open that up. One more to go. And then let the trimming begin. We'll open that up. Give it a good press. So now it looks like that. Again, we have not yet trimmed these. We're just laying them back out again so that we can see the star. And again, this is not a hard block, but I think paying attention to the directions, and I think the directions were written well. And I think if I had done it my way, I wouldn't have done the layout. I would have confused myself, and some of those pieces would have been off. Which is why I had extra, because I knew, well, if you mess up, but if you follow the directions the first time, then you won't have those problems. And I can't even say that because I'll still mess up, or maybe their directions were not perfect. And when I read this, I said, "Oh, they messed up. They told me one less block." And then I went back and looked, and I said, "Oh no, you read that wrong." Okay. So now that those pieces are a little bit more put together, you can really see that block. Ignore all those white spaces, but you can see how the block is forming. It looks exactly the way it's supposed to. Those pieces look like they're woven. There go the name, woven star. Now it's important, and I would use a smaller ruler, but this is the one that I have down here, to square these up. Now, the corners are already 3.5. So I don't have to worry. Let me move this out the way. I don't have to worry about the corners. So the other 16 for the other 12 blocks, I'm gonna have to square up and or trim. And you can trim this however you like. So you can start with your half square triangles. You can start with the centers. You can start by doing top to bottom, left to right. It's totally up to you, but they all need to be 3.5. A good ruler would have a line 45-degree right there. This one doesn't. And there's probably a way to do it using the 45-degree. But I just think that that's a pain. So what did we do before them? That's the method that I'm going to use. Just make sure everything is lined up. These are a little greater than 45. It's not much for that 3.5. What I'm aiming for is to make sure that that diagonal line goes right through the point. That's what I'm really aiming for. And if that diagonal line goes right through the point, the majority of that battle is won. Now line it up with 3.25. Measure twice, cut once. And then I can even measure just to make sure that the measurements are right using my board. So that's 1, 2 together. So let's do the next two. I am making what is a traditional 16 block or a 16 patch. So the patches work in squares. So a 2 by 2 is like 2 squared, which is a 4 patch. A 3 by 3, which is 3 squared, is a 9 patch. A 4 by 4, which is 4 square, is a 16 patch. The next one would be a 25 patch. And that just means it's 5 by 5, 4 by 4, 3 by 3, 2 by 2, 1 by 1 by 1 is just 1 square. And it just lets you know how many squares you have in each column and in each row. Oops. Now, traditionally, when I sew, units, I do side by side. You could do these in 4 patches. So this would be a set, 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 and then sew those together as 4 patches. So I'll show you what that looks like as soon as I finish this one. I find it easier to do it that way than to create large rows or columns. I just think it's easier. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but if you can, I like to try. Now this takes a little bit of maneuvering because I do want 2 different ends to have those diagonals meet. but we can make it work. So again, measure twice so that we're only cutting once. Take your time. And you'll, like, there are some videos you'll notice, like, I go quick. And then there are other times like these where I take my time because accuracy really matters in terms of getting all my points together. Okay, so that's at 1 point. And I'll treat this like a 4 patch and just put these 4 units together. I could do the squaring, the trimming for everything, but hey, why do that? For me, I get bored quickly when things become monotonous. So sometimes it's easier to take a break from the trimming and to move on to the sewing and then move back to the trimming. So I don't get bored easily. So it just changes things up for me. So I may have leftover chicken in the refrigerator and leftover spaghetti. So instead of eating chicken every day, eat that spaghetti and then go right back to that chicken. We'll open this up. Getting rid of some of those extra threads now helps. I've been opening up all my seams. I'm going to continue to open them up. Again, this is personal preference as to whether you want them opened or closed. Press to one side or open them. It's totally up to you. I kind of went to the other side on me. I just want that to lay flat. Sometimes my seams roll on me, and that's happened. Where I'm not paying attention necessarily to how it's pressed. And then I just need to go back and press it flat again. So that's that one. And again, just looking at the pictures or looking at the other units helps me to see what I need to do. Because again, this could still mess up your layout if you're not paying attention. So it's really important to pay attention. Okay. So these units then need to be lined up. I need my seams to line up. And because I pressed open those seams, I have to do the best I can to line those up. Take a clip, clip those seams, then take it to the machine and stitch. As with most quilt patterns, your seams are a 1/4 inch seam unless you find yourself short and you have to budget a little bit less to a scant 1/4 or even sometimes an 1/8 because you did not trim up your blocks and something was off, or because you cut them wrong. And so sometimes we have to compensate for that loss, compensate by using a thinner seam allowance. And we'll just press that open with our finger. Again, take that to the arm and press. And once you get the hang of it, sometimes the blocks will go faster. Sometimes it is what it is. Okay, so here is 1 unit. I want to make sure that I have all 1/4 inches for seams from the point up, because if they go right up against the edge, then it'll cut off my points. But everything should line up. You'll see there's almost 1/4 inches here, because when I put them together, the same thing should happen. So this unit is complete. So we can work on the next unit. This one is already 3.5. And you know, I have to remember, because as quickly as I just said something is as quickly as I forgot, I didn't square these up. But I could tell because I have these tails here, these dog ears here, that are reminding me, you did not square these blocks up. And sometimes when I'm working on a project and I'm working, if I cut the video, so that all you see is bits and snips, things like this, I will absolutely cut out. Because I know nobody really wants to see this process. They want to hear about it, but you don't want to see it over and over and over again. But in real time, unfortunately, you have to see it over and over and over again. And that's just the reality of what we do when we're making quilt blocks. So sometimes it's the same thing over and over again. Especially if we're using the same block. If we're using different blocks, you get a little bit more variety. That's 2. Right in that corner. And remember, my goal is 3.5. So I don't necessarily have to line up the 3.5 with the first cut. I'm trying to get some of it straightened up and get those little dog ears off of it. But when I turn it, that's when I really want to see 3.5. I want to make sure that in addition to seeing 3.5, that line is going from corner to corner. And again, if you have that kind of ruler, you want to go ahead and use that because you can line that line right up with it. Now this is off just a little bit. And I'm going to try my best to get that to line up a little bit better. And get it to line up at the 3.5. Just a little bit better. I'm trying. And this may or may not have worked for me, but I think I got it. And a scant 1/4 inch would have worked for this a little bit better, but I think I got it. Yep, I got it. So I got them back so that the lines are in all the corners. And again, that's why it's great to trim it up. This is all the waste I have so far. Now, the only thing that I did in this process was that I didn't pay attention and I mixed it up. So I just want to make sure that I got it back after I took it out of water. And just like, again, you have 4 pieces. So I treat it like a 4 patch. These should all be 3.5 inches. So they should line up perfectly. And honestly, if you turn this, these should all, it's just a rotation around, so these all should look the same. So I didn't break the chain in between the 2 units because I can easily just leave them together. I'm going to finger press here. And again, you'll notice like the batik lays nice and flat on a finger press. The cotton, not so much, but that's fine. Let's slide that out the way a little bit. So we're just pressing this out. And I am serious about my pressing. Like, I try real hard not to iron. And it's a hard thing to do when you're used to ironing your clothes, when you're used to ironing the fabric. And then all of a sudden, you're pressing. Okay. So then it looks like this. I didn't break that little chain. So now it just helps me to line this up a little bit easier. Making sure again to get those seams lined up. Clip it. If everything was the same size and your seam allowance was right. And then this is also like that part that they talk about that takes this away from some people thinking this is beginner, because you're lining up so much stuff. And sometimes for a beginner, it's easier to do something where you don't have to line things up. And let's clip. We'll open this up. And again, I'm opening up my seams. You can press them to one side if you like. So it's totally, again, up to you how you want to treat your seams. There are some people, they'll turn it over, everything is open, It looks beautiful. They're like, yes. And then there are other people who press to one side and their seams look like it just, the back side looks pretty. So it's all in the pressing and the preparation more than it matters which way your seams go. Okay. And I do want to cut that little thread off. That's going to just drive me crazy. So my center seam comes almost to a point there. It's a smidge off and you really can't tell. These two are lining up. Did they line up on this one too? They almost did on that one. They're lining up really well on this one. So it's the lining up for people that sometimes makes this more difficult, but it's all in the trimming. So then we have 2 units together. And really, we could sew those 2 units together if we wanted to, but I'm going to wait. Let's take this one. We can check number 1 to make sure it fits, and number 2 because they should look the same when I turn it. Again, remember, we have to trim. So we have 6 more blocks that need to be trimmed. We're doing 3 right now. So this takes a little longer to do because of all the trimming, but not impossible. And I love the final look. And I was getting ready to call this the card trick because that is one that I do want to do. And this one also can be done with paper piecing. Because there are people that, with all the steps that I'm doing right now, they don't want to do it this way. And so there is, by that so Emma, I believe, there is Woven Star paper piece unit that you can get. I'm lining everything up. Again, it takes a little time and can drive you bananas, but you see the benefits of doing it that way. And I absolutely don't want to waste my time to show you what it would look like if I didn't do it that way. So we're just taking that time again, making sure that we're hitting the center. And there are little dots that I'm using that's helping me to get to the other diagonal. Because if you hit one and you don't hit the other, it's still going to be a problem. And sometimes you can straighten it out and sometimes you can't. So again, just lining that up. Make sure we're at 3.5 and trim off. And like I said, the one that is not the hardest okay. Just want to make sure I'm not crazy. This one. And what I do is I'm taking this line here, this being the line that I'm matching up. And I want to show you, just so you see it, right here. You can see it's not quite center. So what I'm going to try to do in this process is to get it to be center. So I'm going to line this up with that. And then I'm pushing this up here so that the 3.5 meets this corner. And that's why they're a little over, because we can get this to work with just minimal effort. We'll make sure everything does what it's supposed to do. I was about to be upset, and I realized I wasn't on 3.5. I was like, phew, good job, good job. And I can show you, you can see it now, it's centered. So, and then all the rest of them are centered. So sometimes when it's a little off, I can get it to work because we're trimming them up. And even though it's a little waste, it's just enough, if it's not really off, to trim it up and to get it to fit. Again, we're treating this like a 4-patch and sewing everything together. Okay, that's one. And I keep forgetting I don't have a lot of thread up top. And I'm looking at the bobbin. And I should be able to make it with both. But I need to check, like I don't check like I should. Okay. We're going to finger press these open. So after this one, we have one more unit, and then we're able to put the whole block together. So the more pieces you have, you'll notice the videos that go longer. So even though I'm kind of working at the same pace, because I have more units, this is the first 16 patch that I've done of the blocks. So block number 7 is a 16 patch. All the rest of them were 9 patches. So it didn't take as long. This time I had to put together 12 blocks. But I think the more blocks, the more smaller units that you put together with something, I think the prettier it looks. Okay, so these are together. We make sure everything looks the way it's supposed to. These should be in the same direction. Fold this on top of each other. Make sure that our seams line up. You can pin or clip it. I clip to hold it together. Everything else should line up because we squared everything up and we're using a 1/4 inch seam. If you're guessing your seams, your measurements could be off. So it's important to use that 1/4 inch and to find some sort of way to get a 1/4 inch, whether it is to get a 1/4 inch foot, whether it is to mark a 1/4 inch on your machine, to use some sort of magnet, you need to figure out the way to get it to be the same 1/4 inch, because that will help you with your blocks. So this again, you can see that seam goes right into the center. You can see how these line up. And that's what we're going for. And you can knock all these out and not pay attention and play Russian roulette with whether that matches up, or you can check as you go and again make a decision whether you can live with it or whether you need to seam rip it out. If you feel the need to seam rip it out, that's fine. Throat got a little parched there. You can seam rip it and do it again. But if it looks good, if I like it, I love it. We'll put those back together. And you're starting to see how that star is really coming together. This is the last section. I'm just going to turn this and move that out the way. And just do this last unit. I only have 3 that I have to square up because that corner was already 3.5 inches. And really go for making sure everything is lined up. And it would be really easy for me to cut this out very quickly and just say, okay, this is how you do it. And then it doesn't line up. But I like, even in demonstrations, I like everything to do what it's supposed to do. And it doesn't always work out for me that way, but with good intention, I try to make sure that that happens. So if I can help it, I want everything to line up as best as I can possibly get it. And then if I mess up a little bit, I'm okay with that because nobody's perfect. And again, I have smaller rulers or smaller squares that I could use, but I did some cleaning today and I absolutely put some things up. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to bring some things back out, but I had to put it away to clean up. And then when I started to do some work again, I was like, oh, and we're not talking about as far away. I'm just too lazy to get up and go get it. So we're at 3.5. Now this is off. And I don't know how I did that. So we're going to square this up twice. Because I don't know how I did that. Particularly happy with this one, but I'm going to make it work. Like Tim Gunn says, make it work. Here to 3.5. And then here at the 3.5. And this looks like, nope, let's see what I'm doing here. But that's why we measure twice and we cut once. Because it looks a little off. And this one is a little off, but that's okay. So we'll take our little bit of scrap. And here we go. So we'll place those there. I think that looks like that. So I'll take this unit. They look the same. So I'm good with this one. And then we'll treat it like a 4-patch. So the rows together first and then the unit. And then once we finish this, we have 4 more. Not 4 more, but we now have 4 units, 4 bigger units, and we can treat those like a 4-patch. That's a little off. It's going to be a little off the center. And I'm okay with that. And it might catch. Who knows? When I go in there, we'll see what happens. We'll open this up. And we'll open that one up. I need to look for some supplies. I'm supposed to be working on a project tomorrow. I don't even know if I have everything I need. Maybe making a quick trip to Walmart. We're going to press down those seams. Great job, great job, great job. Line your seams up, which are also like your centers. You clip it. These ends to line up. We'll take this to our machine. They're a little off. Okay. I don't know. I keep putting it down and it's a little off. And let's see what we got. So it was a little off, and you can see just a little off there, but not enough to matter. These lined up perfectly over here. So it was a little off, but it doesn't even it's not affecting the project. It's not so far off that it changes the look of the star. It's not so far off that it's changing the block. It's like minutely off, but nobody, trust me, nobody's gonna notice unless they're up real close with a magnifying glass trying to capture that. And partially that helps because the corners are really good. Okay. So here we go. And you can see just what that's going to look like. Sometimes I impress myself with colors because sometimes when you're putting your colors together, you're like, I don't know. But this worked out really well. So we're going to take these, just like 4 patches. We're going to go this way, and then we're going to go the other way. Again, lining up my seams. And you see, I really do take time to line those seams up because it makes all the difference in the world. And you don't want, if I'm going to have excess, I'd rather it be on the outside because I can trim that off than for it to be, than to throw a seam off. Take my time to get over those seams. I really could clip that. Okay, that's one. It doesn't really matter with this one to clip it, but let me just clip it. Line up those seams. And clip it. And just to keep this straight, we'll clip it. And these were clipped. I can take those off. Let's get that under there. Whoops. We are about 5 minutes, if that, away from finishing up this block. Okay, these are still chained together. So we're going to take this back. Pressing is always key to pretty blocks. Sometimes you want to skip the pressing, that's including me, but it really does help. And if I can figure out how to skip pressing on part of it, I will absolutely figure it out. But it helps to flatten things out. It helps to get everything nice and crisp. So you really do want to take the time to press. We'll show you the 2 units after I press them, the 2 rows. But again, I find doing them in 4 patches works better, but you could have sewn the rows together and then sewn each row to each row. I prefer it this way. And I prefer it this way because if I'm off, I can square it up. I just feel like they line up better when I do it like this. Sometimes you can't avoid sewing rows together. And when you can't avoid it, you can't avoid it. Okay, so that's the top half, and that's the bottom half. And you can see how they line up. This was a little off. I don't know how that happened. This one did a much better job. But again, if it's a little off and you can barely tell it's a little off, it's going to stay a little off in my world. Let me see if I can get that accurate. So if I pressed to the dark side or to one side, I could have nested them and I could possibly have guaranteed a better fit, but it's not that far off where it's going to matter. So I'm lining my seams up and I'm clipping. So 3 different places this time for 3 different seams to get the entire block together. So again, this is the Woven Star. There are a ton of websites that use these. There are a ton of patterns that have the Woven Star. I just picked a website that had a block, and the block was my measurement, which was 12 inches, 12 and a half inches unfinished. And the directions were what I thought was easy enough to read and follow. And so this is Maker Mary. I said Maker Mary, Merry. It's Mary. Mary is in the person. Maker Mary. This was an excess. I don't need that. I'm going to give this one more press on the back just to get those seams to lay flat. There is a lot of bulk in certain places. So sometimes I will use a little spray starch to help get those nice and flat. And sometimes humps just can't be avoided no matter what you do. You can open those seams, you can close those seams, you can press the heck out of the seams, you can starch the seams. It's just there are certain places where it's just going to be lumpy because there are just a lot of seams all coming to one point. And I'm trying to go over some parts of the block because sometimes when I move the iron, I don't lift it up high enough and it causes me to twist a seam. And I don't want to twist the seams because I want them to lay as flat as possible. So I am looking for the points to point. I'm looking for the lines to line up. And here we have the twisted star. So I'm looking to see those points. I'm looking to see how well they line up. And I'm also looking, and I'll show you right here, I don't have a 1/4 inch right here. So when I sew this, I need to be careful on this one to make sure that I don't go too far down to cut that point off. I have more than enough here, more than enough on these two sides, more than enough on these two sides, and these two. So I don't know how I missed it right here, but that's okay. I'll figure that one out when I go to add um, the borders. I'll just make sure that it's faced on this side and I can feel right where I need to go over it. So it'll be like a scant quarter of an inch that I'll go over that. But here is the woven star. I think this came out really cute. It is a 12.5-inch block, which means that if I lay this down on top of this, it should go from corner to corner and cover this whole square. Anything that's out in the excess, I will cut off. But I'll make sure it's nice and flat before I do that. So again, once again, thank you for joining me as we made another block. This is block number, is this 8? I think this is block number 7. Did I start on Sunday? Block number 8, I believe. Thank you for the 20 blocks that I will be making in May. Of course, you know the weekends are always better for me. So I said, let me knock out one that I knew was going to give me a little bit of headache, but we did a great job with it. I think it came out really cool. And I can't wait to make the next block. So please make sure that you are following, subscribing, and liking the lives so that you will see the rest of the blocks and come back because, of course, we're making another one tomorrow. Have a good one.